Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us again, day 3 of the Robotics and Care Hackathon. So today is all about prototyping, getting into the actual technical implementations of our products. So we'll have a series of talks, all more focused on the technical side of things. If you listen to talks earlier in the week, something I've talked about in terms of product development is it's super important for us with the things that we're developing is that we have a solid business case. If we don't, then we're just playing with fun technology, and we want to make sure that we're doing things of real use that are going to get into people's hands and change their lives potentially. But obviously, if we can't implement this technology, then we're just dreaming, really. We can come up with all kinds of harebrained schemes that, if we can't actually deliver them, then it'll be no good to anyone. So we're moving on now to a section of the event that's going to be unapologetically techie. If you're less comfortable with technology, then this is a good opportunity to learn how behind the scenes things, especially at an early stage, are developed. So we'll be hearing from the model team at 10 o'clock, and we'll be talking about how the ear-switch was initially developed. How did Nick, as a relatively non-technical GP, first get a prototype built? How did he get that done? And then we'll be hearing from Thomas from Herit Watt, who has taken the project forward and been integrating it with other kind of hubs and things like Tekla. At 11 o'clock, Mara will be our co-organizer, will be talking about robotics in healthcare, and then we'll have a series of talks today you can see in the schedule all around various aspects of health and technology. Our last session of the day will be on the future of healthcare. So we'll be back in about 20 minutes for our session with the model team. So stay tuned for that. If you're watching this and you're one of the participating teams, you should have received the canvas, which kind of outlines the outputs and deliverables that we'd like you to work towards. I'll be getting in touch with everyone again this morning just to make sure that everyone's comfortable with what they're doing. I'll also host a little bit at the start of the next session at 10 o'clock just to talk about, if you've got an idea and you want to get it rapidly prototyped, what are some things that you can do, some tools that you can use, both for UX prototyping and also for rapid technical prototyping. So I'll cover a bit of that. I'll be having that discussion with Nick. Obviously, you'll be talking about how he first got ear-switch up and running. And then I'll hand over to Brian at Census to lead the rest of the discussion there. So in terms of the teams who are participating, I know some of you will still be essentially on the discovery stage. There'll still be some things and the sort of looking at the users, so there'll be still some things that you're doing there before you actually got a chance to move on to the prototyping. If you're watching this and you're not a member of a team, but you'd like to get involved somehow, then please email events@productforge.io, and we can help potentially integrate you into one of the teams. We'll also be updating through the day the team profiles on the community hub, so you can see what each of our teams are working on, and you can weigh in with any feedback you may have or any suggestions you might have on their product development. So thanks very much. I will be back with you very soon. Thanks. Hi, folks. Welcome back. I'm just keeping an eye on our stream here to make sure that we have everyone visible. Fortunately, I'm not sure we do actually on the stream output. Just give me 1 second, sorry.
They were very complementary with his output, but we had to make sure that we didn't sort of have some dodgy. So I think MND had covered my thing, and they cut off either side, and it said R switch, which wasn't quite what I was envisaging.
Okay, sorry, we've just gone live again, so you just got the tail end of that. As you can tell, this is going to be a bit more of an informal session today. So welcome everyone. I am here with Nick, founder of eSwitch, and Stephen Milne heads up the subject area of health devices within Census. Census is the IoT Innovation Centre in Scotland, and also Nick as well from Function Control, who develop smart home integration. So what we're talking about today, and apologies, we're going to have to keep our masks on because we're right next to each other, so this does look like a bit of a ransom demand video here. But we're going to be talking all about prototyping, rapid technical prototyping. So kind of unapologetically techie, this part of the event. As I said earlier, developing products at Product Forge is all about developing a business case. That's really important. If we don't have a business case and we're just playing with cool technology, which is fun, but we want to solve real user needs. But if we don't have technical implementation, then yeah, we're just dreaming, really. So we can come up with all kinds of cool solutions, but if we can't implement them, that doesn't really count for anything. So for those who are watching, I'm going to run through some slides just around what I mean by prototyping, what is expected if you're developing a project at Product Forge, the kind of things that can kind of get you a bit further ahead, a bit faster. Then I'm going to talk with Nick, who is, would you describe yourself as non-technical, technical?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've just put together a few bits that are already out there. So I'm piggybacking on everyone else's technology. So yeah, on knowledge.
So, I mean, if you're watching this and you are thinking, well, I'm non-technical, I'd never be able to develop something like the eSwitch. I mean, I say not at all. We'll talk about ways that you can get up and running and get over these kind of initial stages. And then I'll leave and I'll be replaced by Thomas, who's been taking forward the development of the eSwitch. He'll talk about how some of these other integrations have been developed in their collaboration with Harriet Watt. So if you're watching this, feel free at any point to weigh in the comments. I'll try and keep an eye at the same time on the live stream discussion. I'm just going to double check here. Feel like I'm trying to do too many things at once, so hence why everything's a wee bit wonky today. But yeah, I think we're good. So just ask any questions on the discussion if you've got any queries. So I'm quickly going to hop into some slides just to talk about prototyping. I'll try not to take too long over this. And in particular, I just want to cover some tools that you can use if you're just getting started. So first of all, just to reiterate again, what we're looking for is a product which is consisting of a business case and a prototype. So the prototype is critical. So what is it that we're potentially looking here in the prototype? Now, if you're participating, then you will have received one of these. This is our Canvas sheet. Often people will be filling this out by hand at our events, but you'll see we've moved on to stage 3, prototyping. So these are the sort of potential deliverables that you can be working towards. So UI, UX mockups, a technical prototype, and a roadmap are the three things that you can be aiming towards here. Now, together, we can hopefully, this could potentially constitute you a minimum viable product, but it may or may not. So let me just go into a wee bit more detail about this. Earlier in the week on Monday, I talked about what a minimum viable product was, and it's ideally the sort of minimum end-to-end solution for a particular use case that you can get into someone's hands, so you can get real user feedback and then iterate onto the next version as quickly as possible. Now, sometimes, in the short length of time you've got an event like this, you might not be able to get that up and running. And that's why we also emphasize other things that you can do to test your assumptions, such as riskiest assumption tests and so on. So if you can't get a fully fledged MVP up and running, the other thing is a demonstration that a key technical challenge can be solved. So what is it? Is there something in particular that everything hinges on? And if so, can you demonstrate how you can actually surmount that challenge? So ideally it would be both of them, but potentially it could just be one or the other. So examples of prototypes, it could be, we could be looking for a UI mockup that will show how a user is going to engage with your app or your service. It could just be a technical integration with a third-party API. And as I said, in the course of a short event like this, we might not to bring all of these things together in one final product. But if we can show both of them, then that UI mockup can be the thing that's needed to get some real user feedback, and the technical implementation can show that that key technical hurdle can be overcome potentially. And with the ear switch, one of the things that Nick and Thomas will be talking about is that integration with smart home devices and Tekla and so on. So that is that's a key technical challenge, I think, at the moment that we're trying to focus on this week with that. This is just how I refer to UI mockups. It's just something that's going to communicate what the product does and how the user is going to engage with it. And the thing is, if you go into potentially building a mobile app or something straight away, that's slow and quite time and resource intensive. So if you can get your initial feedback and iterate without having to put all that development time into actually writing software, the sooner you can do, if you can do that, then you can iterate much faster and much more cheaply. When it comes to UI mockups, it can actually be counterproductive to make it too polished, because people are then potentially expect something that is far more fully fledged than it really is. So if it's obvious that the mockup isn't the final product, then you can actually get more useful feedback from your users. And some of the things that you can use for UI mockup tools, I mean, you can just use pen and paper. And to be honest, for most people, that is often the best route. The only issue with pen and paper is it can be hard to show if something, in terms of dynamic content or anything that's interactive, how can you get that across? It can be a wee bit tricky. In which case, often the second most accessible tool is just using PowerPoint, because you can use PowerPoint to create sort of buttons that link between different slides that show different screens on your app or your web service. You could use diagramming tools, something like Glyphy or Lucidchart. These both have kind of free plans. Or you could go all the way up to using a full wireframing tool like Balsamic. But for a lot of what people are doing, especially in the course of an event like this, you don't need to use anything so sophisticated. And potentially better to use something that you're a bit more comfortable with than trying to learn a new tool over the space of a couple of days. But it's certainly up to you, and these are all different options that you can run with. Now, again, just to reiterate, so what's the point? What's the point of doing this in this event? So, if the success of what you're doing hinges on a particular technical implementation or technical challenge, then you need to be able to show that you can actually deliver that. Now, the other thing is, if you don't think that you will be able to do that this week, then at least can you show what your approach would be to solving this problem? Do you really understand what the challenge is, the resources you'll need and you'll need to access, the advice and the mentoring that you might need, the people that you might need to bring on board, so that then if you need some resource into this, you can say, right, this is what we need to get this accomplished. So I'm whizzing through this. If anyone's got any questions or anything they want to weigh in, then please let me know. But probably the thing is, for most prototypes, there isn't usually some key major thing that needs to be solved. It's going to be in the overall implementation. So we really want to try and reach an MVP, or minimum desirable product, as quickly as possible, so that you can get something into a user's hands. And then, as I said, the how you solve the problems of development. So there's potentially, you don't necessarily need to start coding, and this is kind of the main thing that I want to get across here, is that when you're a software engineer, the first thing you ever think is a problem that's going to be solved by writing some software, setting up a database, and getting into all of that stuff, fun stuff. But consider how you can potentially get into prototyping your service with tools that are just kind of off the shelf, especially now this is obviously more applicable to digital software type products. And I'd be really interested, potentially Stephen might have some kind of feedback as to if you're working on hardware, and that's also what Nick's having to be doing. How can you do this kind of stuff when you're developing a hardware product? If you're developing something, something that you think will eventually be an app, is there something that you can prototype using If This Then That or Zapier? These are two platforms that allow you to effectively to mash up lots of different other web services. So potentially, that a user needs to fill out some data, and then they need to get some kind of some data processing will be done on it, and then it's going to spit out a PDF or email them or something like that. Now that whole end-to-end solution might be something that you can prototype without without writing a single line of code. And then certainly take as much advantage as you can of existing tools and frameworks and APIs that already exist out there. Even if it's not perfect, the point is get something built as quickly as possible to get feedback. You can go back and revisit this stuff later on. Now, as I said, I really want to emphasize this because coders want to code, and sometimes you just, it's fun, and there's a thing called yak shaving. We do something that leads to another task, that leads to another task, and we go down a rabbit hole that's really fun, a great intellectual exercise, but we're still not doing what's necessary to get our MVP up and running. And in the end, if we spend too much time on that, then we've just, we might not ever get anything off the ground. Now, there's some things that often software engineers will come back with about saying things like this. I don't want to do something too rough and ready because I don't want to build up a bunch of technical debt. And every software engineer is gone into an existing project every software engineer will have the experience of going into a project that's just never been planned properly, that was a hack to begin with, and then just hack is layered on hack. And I've certainly had that experience. So when you're in at the beginning, you think, right, this is the opportunity to do something properly. Now, that's absolutely admirable, and certainly the problem is generally we need the discipline to know when we're moving from hack into product that needs to be polished, and often that transition never happens properly, and it does go from hack to hack. But if you spend too much time at the beginning perfecting things, then often you might not ever get anything off the ground at all. Another thing that's really common is to probably put too much value on flexibility. You think, I'm going to build this so it can do X, Y, and Z, because I think that might be needed later. But even if that is needed later, potentially you still may run out of time at the beginning building that flexibility in, and it may be better just to accept the fact that you'll be doing a lot of refactoring as the product develops, and that's okay. There are lots of things that make sense in an established company, an established startup, or corporate environment that just don't make sense when you're just doing really rapid, iterative, and experimental designing. And this is not to encourage bad habits. This is not to encourage, slapdash kind of working practices or anything like this. It's just to know kind of when we were talking about idea development, going from brainstorming, so divergent thinking, into convergent thinking. I think the important thing is to know when you're moving from rapid prototyping into something that is going to have to be something that's polished, and especially in the context of obviously anything that might be a medical device, going into something that's going to have to be reliable, safe to use, and is going to have to go through some kind of certification. So just know which kind of stage you're at, and don't get bogged down at the beginning. But as I said, it's not to mean that slapdash processes are also okay. For the technical team members in a small project like this, there's a couple of bits of advice. The people who are non-technical in your team, and I'm saying technical and non-technical like this all the time, and nobody is 100% technical or 100% non-technical, and technical in what? I have a software engineering background. I know nothing about hardware, electronics, or anything like this. So in that regard, I'm completely non-technical. So I'm just using this as a shortcut in terms of some of this advice. But the people who are non-technical in your team, they're going to find it really hard to evaluate the approach that you're taking, and they're just going to have to take your word for it often. So there's maybe a bit more responsibility there than you're used to. You don't have other people providing technical oversight. So it's really important that you're extra honest with yourself, because other people are going to be relying on you to make good evaluations as to what is a good use of your own time. And just to say, put yourself in the other person's shoes, because it can feel quite disempowering and frustrating when you're relying on someone who's providing all of the technical input into something and you just don't know what is doable or not. On the flip side of that, for the non-technical team members, it's hugely challenging to rapidly develop things at pace. And you may be at the point where you're thinking, oh, if it can do this, and it can do that, and it can do the next thing, and all the rest of it. It really helps if you can keep focused on that minimum viable product. So don't keep piling on features before you've reached that initial stage. And all you're going to be doing is causing the technical team members needless anxiety, because they're never going to get it all finished. So keep the focus. And the other thing to mention is that it's also just a different type of work. So often, technical work requires like long periods of uninterrupted focus. So just kind of keep that in mind, making sure that, you may be going out and getting lots of feedback, and you may be having an idea every few minutes, but make sure that the technical folk in your team have got that time to actually sit and focus on getting something over the line. And then, again, just to reiterate this, you're going to proceed through a number of stages at startups in a startup or an early stage of product development. And that could be based around the fact that you may be going through some kind of program, you may be going through a hackathon or event or something like that. And make sure that you need to make sure you get over the line at each stage. If you spend too much time on something at an early stage, then you might never reach the next stage. So even if you're particularly proud of a particular feature that you've built, don't get hung up on it. You need to get everything else done. The product's a means to an end, to get feedback, to get early adopters, to get paying part customers, and eventually to get product market fit. And if things are going to change many, many times before it's ready for prime time. So if you're a software engineer, be prepared for lots of refactoring. When it comes to hardware, there's going to be other concerns in there. So I just wanted to give that quick whistle stop tour. I hope that made sense. I'm just like now to kind of hand over to Nick really and talk about how you had this idea. What was it that you had to do first? How did you first get your prototype developed?
I mean, I guess the idea had been there for some time. So it was really thinking, can I actually see something when I move this muscle in my ear? And it was when I saw this program 3 years ago with this 13-year-old with cerebral palsy. So I looked at Amazon, and because you can't, as a GP, you look at someone's ear with the otoscope. So I needed something I could look in my own ear because I wasn't going to put anyone else through this. I didn't know whether anyone else could control their earphones. So if I can switch to the top camera. These are effectively the iterations. Basically, this was the first thing that was available. And so it's really getting what's available to you, which is basically an otoscope camera with a speculum in, which is similar to what people use when you go to the GP. And basically, I spent the whole time just getting things off Amazon, seeing what's available, the Bluetooth ear hook, and that was my first product. It's the thing that actually showed that the eardrum moved. It also showed that it would stay stable in the ear, and then I just got some open source software. So initially that was looking at what was available.
So this is just a USB, just plug into a laptop, and then you just got the software.
Absolutely. So it basically features a camera on the laptop, and then really I was looking around to see what sort of software was out there that would do the job. So what I was looking for was movement detection software. So it's really sort of expanding your horizons, thinking, in what other scenarios would a movement detection software be produced? And there was something called iSpy Connect, which is a security camera monitoring system that triggers off when it picks up movement. So this was free, open source. I downloaded it and found out that I could pick up the movement. And then it was really, I did have to learn to code a few lines just to send off a keystroke to a virtual keystroke. And then and there's something called Grid 3, which is assistive technology software, and that has a 3-month free trial period. So I just downloaded that. And within probably a month or so, I'd actually gone from an idea to actually proving that I could communicate to a degree. It might have been a bit longer to get to that point, but I knew that there was a movement. I knew there was movement that could be detected. I validated it again with some open source software, looking at analysing the videos, seeing was there actually movement that could be picked up digitally, and so I was beginning to get graphs of movement like this. And then I thought again, so there is some eardrum movement around the outside, so canal movement. And I felt that if I just showed this to someone, they'll go, well, you're just moving the thing in your ear. So at that point, I didn't have the ear hook. And so there's open source software out there that can actually measure 2 points. So I analysed the graphic of the videos and showed that there was actually movement between the end of the malleus of the bone and the edge of the eardrum. So really the whole thing was not only just iterative in its design, but iterative in checking that I wasn't actually just making it up, because it's very easy to subconsciously move a camera thinking that you're making the movement. Because so there's that sort of iteration. But so once I'd actually got it, the next thing was, how do I make this into something that is actually wearable? Because no one's going to want to go around with one of these things in their ears for too long, like I was doing yesterday or whenever it was. So it's really looking at what could I use to actually to anchor it. So I went through various different iterations, again, looking widely, in what other situations do people need to do these things? So it's security guards, bouncers, they have in-ear microphones, but these are normally, but that's too spongy, so that was no good. Then the other thing I'd looked at was the sort of ear piece that I've got here, which a famous producer makes. So I drilled it out and put the otoscope through it, and actually found that the microphone, the speaker doesn't actually look at the eardrum, which I thought was very bizarre for a big tech company, and so that was no good. So then you look at these sort of performers microphones and drilled those out, but I couldn't get it right. This was a very good option. It's a heat molded earplug, and so what I managed to get was from China was some nice, even smaller otoscope. So you need to look around. So Alibaba is fantastic. It's a Chinese direct from manufacturer producer, and so that was amazing. 4mm camera with a few LEDs around the outside. Drilled out. You had to do a little bit of drilling with a lot of these things. Drilled out there to 4.5mm and shoved it in. So now with that is completely anchored, and so you don't get any extraneous movement. But the position's not great. Ideally, we're not looking to get people to mold their own earphones. We want a consumer device that people can just put in their ear. So the next thing was to mold the ears to see what sort of position we need. That's too soft. This is actually, again, going wider. You think, well, what do other people use in their ears? So hearing aid, if you go to the audiologist, they will mold you a hearing mold. So this is a lot better. So it sets within 2 minutes. And so you can begin to work out what direction you need to point the camera, because that was the other thing. You want a standard direction for everybody. Next thing, these things are fantastic. So they anchor it. This goes around the helix of the ear. And so it fits very nicely in, but it wiggles around a bit. So next thing I need to do is plug that with a bit of silicone so it doesn't wiggle. Haven't done that yet. But ultimately, you have to go back to why people do this. That's been there for several hundred years, and you suddenly realise, actually, the reason why people do things is because it works. So that is what that does is navigates the curve around the ear, because there is quite a curve, and automatically, if you put the camera at the end of this, it looks straight at the eardrum. But it's a little bit uncomfortable, so mixing this with that, use that as a mould, put that in, and then actually you don't need it that long. You put that, you cut it off, and so now, effectively, we have something which is proven to be small enough in it to go in your ear and comfortable, and also, and the camera gets a bit hot, so so we need to get a camera that doesn't get quite as hot when it gets warm, and then you look at how other some of the military tech headphones use it behind the ear. So if you can link that on to hook out behind the ear, we now have something that hopefully will be nicely anchored. So as you can see, a lot of it's not technical. It's really about looking at how other people have done it and gaining from there.
So this was your very starting point.
Yep.
And this allowed you at least to ensure that you could get the data that meant that, okay, I know that I'm onto something here. And then this was the point that you. Is this the point that you mentioned that you had to do a little bit of coding, or you just did data extraction?
Yeah, a bit of coding with that one, absolutely. And the other problems we've had is, someone mentioned it previously, is that manufacturers, or to me previously anyway, manufacturers change. So this is no longer available because they've gone for longer ones, which are more useful for people looking for wax in their ears because they're more easily to manipulate. The shorter ones, the one in here, is not available at all, because it's very fiddly. That just isn't a consumer device. So what they've done effectively is embedded it in a bigger mould. So actually, if you go direct to manufacturers, they will actually produce them. So I've got some of those produced directly from the Chinese manufacturers, although they didn't do exactly what I wanted. So, there's always that issue, and it takes a month or two to get them through. So communication is key. I'm amazed what they will manufacture for you. And then you actually find that you actually have to choose which manufacturer you use, because this one is a lot better than this picture. So we found that this one gives a lot better data, and with Thomas's software, this one's a lot better. So you have to choose your manufacturer as well.
So yeah, no, I'm really fascinated by the fact that we've just throughout all of this. I mean, you've gotten this far in the project, and in terms of proof of concept and everything, but nothing's been custom manufactured or designed. I mean, you've requested these, but these are kind of components of a product that's already out there in the market.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at this stage, just very quickly as well, before I hand over to the guys, I'm curious about, did this feel like, some people, if you say, right, you're going to have to do maybe something in it, do a little bit of coding, that would be, for some people, they'll think, oh no, there's just no chance, that's it, complete deal breaker, roadblock. What was your feeling at that point when you knew you had to do that?
I mean, although not technical, I've programmed, when it used to be called programming, I've programmed a BBC microcomputer in the past, so I do have some. Yeah. I have some background, so I know how things work, and I knew that I could probably learn how to do it. So yeah. I felt I wasn't going to get anywhere down this line at all, because I felt I needed someone as a coder to do it. And I spoke to lots of people who said, yes, we can help, or it's really interesting, but really didn't evolve.
Yeah.
And so that's why I would have never thought I would have got to this stage by myself. But it took a lot of reading around. I was really interested in it, so I wanted to do it, and it's fun. Mm-hmm. And I knew where I was going. I knew I wanted to help people communicate, and once I could see it move, I knew I could do it.
Yeah.
I knew I could help people communicate. So it was that drive that I knew it's possible, but no one was actually helping me. So it was just really at that stage, just seeing how far I could get.
And I suppose the thing is, you knew at this point, look, all I need to do in terms of that coding, and going back to things being very just sort of rough and ready, this doesn't have to be perfect. I just need to demonstrate a proof of concept here. I just need to get that over the line. Absolutely. It doesn't have to look good. I probably won't be the one who's going to, and you're not, it's Thomas who's now doing the software development side of things. Mm-hmm. You just needed to get that initial bit over the line.
Absolutely.
So great. Well, that's really, and I just that's a great kind of overview of someone who's non-technical, who hasn't got anything, hasn't got a product design or anything on board, but has managed to get this far in terms of the proof of concept, and now you can get this out to people, get an actual feedback and iterate, and then when it comes to actually the point where you're thinking about spending money on getting software developed or getting the product designed, you know much more clearly what you want. So the further you can go yourself, the better that is.
And Amazon, I can't sort of overrate what's on Amazon. It's just, or eBay is the other thing. eBay's, these things have come from eBay. So, and Alibaba, I mean, I couldn't have done it without the internet. There's no way.
Yeah. So I'm gonna swap out with Thomas. So you can talk about the software side of things. But Stephen, do you have any kind of thoughts on?
Yeah, really interesting seeing how you develop that. Because we deal with a lot of connected products through from kind of remote monitoring, wearable products, people putting sensors in housing, areas like that. And what we see a lot of is people aren't sure what data they actually need to collect at the start. So we're always saying just get as much data collection as possible, start working out what's the valuable data. So we do quite a lot at an early stage with companies around prototype boards, electronic prototype boards, which are really good for the start of development because everything's open source. They'll tend to have open source apps. They'll, even the very first stage, they'll just dump all the data into a spreadsheet so you can start seeing what you're gathering and taking that data and looking, just even see how useful it is. So there's a couple of ones that are worthwhile looking at if you're developing kind of sensor-based connected products. One's called the Thunderbolt Sense 2. That's by a company called SI Labs. And it's a Bluetooth sensor board. It's got about 7 or so sensors on it, and it measures things like kind of temperature, humidity, accelerometer data. And that uses Bluetooth to speak to a mobile device. We've used that in lots and lots of projects now, but just because it's so good at that early stage to just start gathering data, making sure that people can understand the quality of the data to start with. I mean, it's pretty low cost. You're talking about £30 worth of hardware, but you can deploy that quite widely and start gathering data at a low cost and start to actually validate the idea without doing any bespoke coding or even hardware development. But as it kind of moves through that, then because it's all open source, you've got all the design schematics are open source, all the software, so you can start to actually build much more bespoke and to get towards your product stage. But it's at that first stage, it's really great. And there's another one as well called the Thingy 91 or 92, I think it is, and that's by Nordic Semiconductor. And that uses a similar principle, as in it's a board that's got multiple sensors on it, but that also has got a cellular comms module in it, so you can actually kind of put these very remote. It doesn't require kind of any kind of phone connection or anything like that. You can start gathering data that way, and that's another brilliant way of doing it at the start. And a lot of these have got graphical programming interfaces as well, so you don't even have to write any lines of code yourself. You can start really experimenting, and it's really powerful, because even a few years ago you would have had to go through a lot of more bespoke development, doing kind of breadboarding of devices, where that now there's these platforms now you can start to do that, and that will lead you all the way, or start you on the pathway with electronics and sensor devices that can lead you to a final kind of commercial product without having to start with something and then change platform again. So yeah, really it's getting easier than ever to create product connected hardware now. So and you don't at the start have a great amount of technical skill to show that. And Thomas, see you've joined us now. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt. Yeah, I'm Thomas. I've recently got involved with Nick with the EarSwitch project, and yeah, I've been doing a bit more of the software side of things. So, as Nick said, he's already got a system working with using open source software that he's found online and stuff. I'm now developing my own software to apply to the same problem, to sort of refine and make clearer the output from the cameras that Nick's got the options of, potentially gather data from them to apply AI to, and just generally try and improve upon the system that Nick's already shown can work. So I'm developing those and the connections between the software, the accessibility software, and the smart home hardware as well. So that's where I've sort of been brought into things.
I think, do we want to try and show? Alan, did you want to plug this in? Which one do we need to plug? Is Alan listening? No, I think Alan's... Just bear with us. We can show you some of the interfaces that, and we can show, because Nick's got, in the background there, has got his smart home interfaces.
Yeah.
So I'll move all my things out of the way. So you see. So do you want to talk through it, or would you like me to?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit. So I've developed a program that works similar. It takes the input from the camera and finds the motion and outputs it in a similar way to the open source software. So it's one version simulates a key press. I've got another version of my program which outputs like a CSV file showing the motion data collected and records the raw footage from your ear as well, so that for future applications we can start to refine the movement and just make it more effective as a product. But using the key press input, we can activate things like the smart home here, which is function controls smart home panel you can see behind on other Nick's screen. So this is how the software works. So we can just press buttons on screen and it'll turn on lights in the background there. And we've been working on connecting the accessibility software to this software in order for people to control their home using their ears.
You got a blind going there down. So I've done that just with just the mouse keyboard at the moment, but this is just to really demonstrate the connectivity.
Yeah.
We've also got integration with something called the Tekla, which if I show people the Tekla, that's a very neat blue switch. It's actually designed just to be a simple switch itself, but actually that's not its major connectivity. Its major connectivity is actually through to Android type interfaces, and so we can basically use that to use accessibility software within the Android, so that it can actually control any graphical user interface. And just like the one we just showed you on the screen, there's effectively a one on the Android, so we can control remotely. So the one thing we're just getting now, Thomas has done the coding to send out the control for this. We're just waiting for physical relay for the moment, so we can do it by physical wire to begin with, and that should turn up today, and then we should be able to send out the codes directly from this, and then control Nick's lab remotely. So that's once we've got that, that's rather than try and reinvent the wheel and make lots of user interfaces for people with technology needs. Is really the advantage with the Tekla is that it actually will interface with anything already, and it's a very neat device. So it just will control graphically anyone's interface they have already. So the environmental controls have a very neat control system as well. I mean, Nick, do you want to comment on that? Function control.
Yes, hi there. The Tekla has created quite a nice interface for us between Nick's output from the ear switch to control of our demonstration smart home here, but that would relate to a real smart home. So what's happening is the Tekla is using an if this then that connection to communicate commands from the ear switch through the Tekla to the smart home here. So we can say the ear switch will bring on the living room light, or ear switch presses a button on the Tekla visualization to bring on to close the blind, and we can even do things like have a specific button in the Tekla app that that acts as a central off. So if all the lights were on and the blind was open, one command could switch off all the lights and close the blind, and start getting quite clever with how that works. So that's a really nice integration. It looks like it's going to be easy to use the output from the ear switch to do simple functions via the Tekla. It kind of cleans up the interface, whereas a dedicated smart home interface like we have for the Gira smart home here, designed by the manufacturer Gira, not as an accessibility app but as a smart home app, it doesn't necessarily lend itself perfectly to working with the scanning sort of accessibility functionality, whereas the Tekla app is geared up specifically for that. So it gives us a really nice through workflow sort of to make sure that everything works smoothly and it's really easy to use for a user. I guess the other sort of advancement to this that's in my mind is using the Tekla and the if this then that sort of interfacing does involve us going up using the internet. It's a cloud-based solution, so we're sending commands. We're relying on an internet connection and the reliability of that. So in a mission critical scenario, it's definitely worth developing a more direct solution, so that if someone's in the home, they're not reliant on bouncing a command up into the cloud and back down again in order to switch on their lights or whatever. If we can have something more robust as a direct interface between the ear switch and the smart home, it doesn't risk loss of connection because a network issue or the internet's not reliable or whatever. That's a development that I think would be really worth getting into as well.
Certainly, as a general trend, that local processing is becoming huge now, as in people don't want everything going up to the cloud. So with the kind of price of electronics dropping now, you're seeing a lot of that processing that would have happened in the cloud with maybe the first generation of connected products starting to happen on device. And the devices are power efficient enough that you can still have relatively small batteries and get that level of granularity and kind of analysis at the device level. What you're chatting about there, Nick's really interesting, because there's a big move towards kind of the healthy aging agenda where you're almost repurposing equipment you'll buy yourself. So at the moment, typically if you're aging in your house and you need assistive technology, it'll be kind of whole new kind of end-to-end solutions will be dropped in the house. Whereas what's really interesting, what you're talking about here is the fact that you're kind of utilizing already technology. People might just be interested in having kind of smart home technology within the house, and then as they maybe need assistive technology, these interfaces that you're developing at ear switch start to come into play where it just integrates seamlessly, and it's just something that people will have a different interface to that technology, and that's kind of really exciting. That's going to be a huge growth area over the next few years where you'll see that repurposing of consumer technology potentially having kind of almost, I always describe it as kind of stronger backbone to it, so it's kind of more resilient. So like you're talking about the kind of the comm side of it, the power side of it, making sure that it will still operate when potentially there's no power or no communications type software. So it's definitely moving that direction. It's kind of, and it's an exciting space. There's lots of potential for new products and business there as well, because it's only the start of that kind of move towards, particularly the assistive space, that kind of digital transition. It's only really just starting when it comes to assistive care. Majority of that's still run through the analog network at the moment. So although they've maybe had technology deployed for decades now, alarm switches and technology like that, it's only just starting to migrate to digital, and that kind of almost creates a platform where you can do kind of so many interesting things and have so many different applications that you can gather data. So And the key thing for things like ear switch, I think, is the fact that they've traditionally been maybe like closed shop kind of end-to-end applications, but they're almost getting forced to open up now to allow other products to start interfacing. So like things like different ways of interfacing, kind of things like connected pill boxes, that type of technology is starting to come in where people can produce a product, integrate it into that existing infrastructure, and have a large market there already that is complementary to what they're already doing. And I think that's going to be a huge kind of advantage for kind of startups and companies producing interesting technology over the next few years.
Yeah, that was something that I think that Nick and I've been trying to work on, is if we can make the ear switch work the same way as other accessibility switches work, then this can just plug and play with any accessibility software on the market. And that's what we've really been pushing for, and what I've been trying to get to at the point in my software. And instead of using all these open source things, if we can make some software that allows it to act as an existing accessibility switch acts, then we can connect it to things like the Tekla, and then from there, the possibilities are almost endless.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to keep the ear switch as simple as possible, because we're just the front end to some really good technology that's out there already. There's also a very good software called Grid 3, which has environmental controls as well within it. But talking about the iterative process and sort of prototyping, it's been difficult to link in the output from Grid 3 to what Nick's got there. So, that I'm sure will come. And we've gone back to them and say, can you use this particular protocol? And maybe they have got it in the background, or they've got it in the process. So, but in a short period of time, it's just, what can work now. And it actually will quite quickly come around to Tekla being actually the central pivotal point, which has already been well designed to control everything else. So why fight with something? Let's collaborate and let's do what we do well, which is simple on-off switch, and let everyone else do the integrations.
Mm. And Tekla allows us access to not just the smart home, but you can control your phone and your TV in the house as well with it. It's a really good product, and it's good.
Yeah.
Alan's whispering at me. I'm not sure what he's whispering. He's got headphones on. I've got headphones on. I can't hear.
Have a look at the private chat.
I can't. My eyes aren't good enough to look at the private chat. Has someone asked a question? Or is Alan sending us code?
Yeah, I was just saying, certainly if anyone's developing kind of connected products, then feel free to drop me an email and I can have a chat with you offline to this as well. So I know Alan's got my email, so he might be able to share that with the teams as well. But I mean, we as Innovation Centre exist to kind of help with that kind of earlier stage kind of prototyping and looking at the best technology. So we could certainly point in the right direction if anyone's developing connected products like we've been discussing today.
I think one of the things for the development of any of these things is connection, but connection in LinkedIn sort of connections. These sort of hackathons are amazing for people who have come on it. But also the other thing is just to think widely. Just don't think of the application you're already in. Think, where has this been done before? Who is doing similar but different? Who's already putting things in people's ears? Who's controlling things? And the other thing is think about the biological systems. Because some of the stuff I've been doing on the ear switch, has actually, there's overlap with bats, acoustic hearing, and then I've got into hearing aids and earphones and those sort of things. So think widely. You'll become the expert in your own field because no one else will have that particular niche. No one else will be coming at it that way. So just think, use everything you can, and it's quite a journey. Great fun. I think Alan's going to come and take control, I think.
Are you wanting to? Alan will come in and sign off then.
Yeah, so I just thought I would jump back in just at the end, just to wrap things up a bit. So I really appreciate everyone joining us for the session, and just in terms of those things you were saying there, Nick. Is there any other kind of advice you would give to non-tech founders?
I think it's ideal if you can get someone online at the beginning. At the beginning, I knew I couldn't do this myself. So wherever it goes, you'll have to be licensed. If it's going into hearing aids and things like that, it will need to be licensed to a big tech company. I'm not the set up a company that's going to compete with Apple and Samsung and the big 5 hearing aid companies. And I never even thought I'd set up a company in the first place. What I thought was I had a good idea and someone would grab it and run with it. But it takes a little bit harder work than that. I don't think anyone. I think you have to prove your idea, which is in some ways it's a shame, because I'm sure there's some really good ideas that never get further because people just don't have the time or know where to start. And so rather than look at it as knowing where you're going, it was just an iterative process of me learning how to write a patent and put things together and things like that. So if you can get, so at the beginning, what I was going to say was I was very happy to take a co-founder, because I'd never even expected to make any money out of this at all. So if someone had come along and said, I can do this and we can go in it together, I'd been very happy. And quite often when you listen to the podcasts, like the MedTech podcast, they talk about getting a co-founder. So I think it is invaluable. Obviously at this stage, I've got to this stage without, so I'm in a slightly different position because I've got the IP, I've got the value, I've got the interest. But actually right at the beginning, there's quite a lot of massive chance I'd never got as far as I have. And so, if you can get someone who's interested, and will spend their time and commit something to it, then that's worth it.
Yeah. Great. Okay, well, thanks very much, everyone. Thank you, Stephen, for joining us for the session. And just to reiterate, if any of the teams watching this would like some advice around connected devices, we'll be able to connect you in with Stephen for some support today. So let us know if you're kind of in that camp. You can check out Census at CENSIS. I think I got that right, online. So thanks very much, everyone. We'll be hearing next from Mauro. He's our co-organizer on the event, and he'll be joining us in around 5 minutes. So thanks very much, everyone, and speak to you all later.
Thanks.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the stream. I'm here with Dr. Marta Vallejo. She works within the Research Institute of Sensors, Signals and Systems here at Heriot-Watt University, and the talk is sensor-based machine learning for patient diagnosis and monitoring. So take it away, Marta.
Thank you very much. Well, as you hear, my name is Marta Vallejo. That we had some kind of discussion. Properly in Spanish is called Vallejo, but I know that it's rather complicated to pronounce. I'm a tenure track research fellow in the School of Engineering and Physical Science, and with a background in machine learning. My undergrad is in computer science, and yeah, I work at Heriot-Watt for a long time, but 2 years as a tenure track. My talk today it's about sensors for healthcare, and in this first slide, what I'm doing is to divide sensors into 3 groups. I know that perhaps this is my personal view of seeing how can sensors be divided. What you can see is like sensors in general. What they do is to collect data from patients, and it can be done in different ways. And one of the things is if the sensor is or not in the person. Then we have on one side wearables that in a way are sensors that are in one or another way attached to the person. It goes with the person moves, the sensor goes with it. And another kind of sensors are externals, what is called Internet of Things, and in a way it's things that can collect data about us, but are surrounds in our house, in our office, or in other locations. And I put in the middle of them some kind of personal sensors that they are with us, like phones or tablets, but it's not really required that in a way travel with us all the time. For what I'm doing of diagnosis and monitoring I use personal sensors. I not really use wearables, and I not use external sensors that are located outside. From this point of view, these kind of sensors can be used for different things. You can use it for diagnosis, for the monitoring it doesn't need to be for it can be also checking your normal healthy life. You can also use it for as an alert system if something goes wrong. You can even use it for drug delivery. Recently I was involved in a project that you have a wearable that is able to, in a way, inject with some kind of drug if the person needs it at some point. Or it can be used to monitor some kind of treatment regulation. It's not really that they give you any drug, but in a way monitor how the drug in a way works in you. But there are much more situations where you can use these kind of sensors. In general, when you have a sensor, you buy or design the sensor, then place it wherever it is, and the sensors send the information towards a cable or a Wi-Fi or other type of transmission system, and this raw data it's in a way collected some kind of cloud system or your computer or your in a physical location. And what happens is that you need to, in a way, to aggregate this data in some kind of database or pre-process the data. There is some kind of manipulation that you do the data before you really store this data. Once that you have this storage, normally what you do is to analyze this data, and there is when it's more coming the machine learning part, and then you visualize the data. That can be, in your watch, that when in a way telling you how your activity of the day was, or in your computer, or in a file that is sent to the clinician. Can be in a very different ways. from all the possible areas of healthcare that I could be interested, my main work is in neurodegenerative diseases that can cover different type of conditions. And in general, what I work in the special is in the area of Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease is a progressive neurodegenerative disorder with high incidence. It's the second with more that it affects more people after Alzheimer, and it has a strong burden for the health system. Affects mostly people of old age, but not in all the cases. And most of the cases, I think it's almost 90%, are not caused by genetic issues. There are 4 primary symptoms of Parkinson's disease. They are here. That is tremor, rigidity, bradykinesia, and postural instability. Most of people know Parkinson's because of the tremor, but it's not something that always can happen. When you go to the doctor, you only need to in a way fill these 3 of these 4 cases. In general, there are even 20% of the people who suffer Parkinson's and they don't develop tremor at all. This makes in a way the diagnosis of the disease complicated, because not only that you have 4 different primary symptoms, but also that the symptomatology in general is rather complex. If in the left we see how is this kind of Parkinson iceberg with this kind of four key elements. As I said, you don't really need to have all of them, but later on, if you see that there are a impressive list of other kind of symptoms that you can or not develop. And it's not like you have Parkinson's and you have a list of conditions and that's all. No, these conditions has developed from the beginning of when you develop Parkinson's to the end. And there are different steps that you go through when you suffer this condition. You have a first prodromal PD where you are developing the disease, but you are not aware. There are different type of symptoms that the problem is like they are not significant enough to be able to really diagnose with the conditions. And one that is the onset of the disease, when you start to have important problems, is when you go to your doctor, and then they tell you that perhaps you have the disease, and from there it develops more and more until the end. Apart from this kind of very complex symptomatology, also there is the challenge when you want to diagnose the illness, is that Parkinson's is a type of disease inside of other diseases. All the diseases that in a way have the same type of or similar symptomatology are called Parkinsonisms. And as you can see here, are not only one, they are different ones. And the problem is, even with a doctor that is aware of all of these things, the rate of misdiagnosis can go from 10 to 25%. And in fact, the only diagnostic gold standard that is still the gold standard is post-mortem. Meaning that there are people that suffer a condition that the person knows thinks that know that is Parkinson for perhaps 20 years, died, and when they do a postmortem analysis, discover that it doesn't have Parkinson. Then the idea is to in a way to create some kind of supporting tools that is able to in a way complement the clinicians in their duty to diagnose this complex disease. And from this point of view, I worked for some years in the use of different type of wearables and sensors. The key of these sensors is that are conventional use for a long time in neuropsychological tasks, are not really sensors that are unknown for clinicians. This makes that the use of the models that we can create at some point, they are more easy to implement in a clinical, from a clinical point of view. And these are tasks like figuring copying, like the person use a tablet and write some kind of predefined figure, or finger tapping task where you have two sensors applied to your fingers, and the idea is that you open and close as much as fast as possible, or the measurement of the tremor arrest. The idea is that instead of how it was in the past, that the clinician look at your fingers, how you open and close, is that could collect data from the sensors and be able to apply some kind of model to give you another assessment of what the data is like. Then, for example, if we are using the figuring copying tasks, the idea is to choose a drawing that emphasizes the symptoms under consideration. One of the tasks or the figures that has been tested as a good test for diagnosis is this kind of pentagon. But in a way, it's rather complicated to. It's not easy even to analyze, because yes, you have the template here, and when the control come and do the writing, you can see exactly where are the corners and everything. On the other hand, if the Parkinson patient comes, dealing with the data and understanding all of the characteristics of the features are rather challenging. Another thing that you can do is to take the data raw from for example, the tablet. And this is only a list of X and Y points through the time. And from this, you can infer the velocity and plot it like that. And the idea is that visually, you can determine some characteristics that are typical for Parkinson's. For example, this kind of, as you see on the right, this type of two-stage acceleration. However, yes, there are things that in a way you can really see as a visual inspection, but there are other hidden features that in a way are not so easy to see from a human point of view. For this, what we do is to create some machine learning or deep learning models. And this is a typical figure of what is the difference between a machine learning and deep learning model. And well, the idea of that is that each of these models has its good points and bad points. A traditional machine learning model, you have an expert who tells you what are the features, what are the important elements that you have to think from your data in order to create your classification model. This is good, and also this is bad, because it also can give you some kind of bias. Is the expert thinking all the elements that has to think, or there is things that are missing and because it's not, are not known. On the other hand, the traditional machine learning, some of them are highly interpretable, and this is very good from the point of view of the model has to be in a way understandable enough to in a way be trusted by the clinician, if you really want that the clinician use it. The deep learning models are models that in general, when you have a more high level volume of data, their performance is higher than the machine learning traditional model. On the other hand, they are not very easily interpretable, and are also not the performance is better, but in a way people don't trust them very much. And we have this kind of white box, black box models, calling white box things that in a way I can put as a model, but at the end there is some kind of easy understanding from, well, because you can see what are the features, how these features are in a way, which ones are the most important, or because in a way that you can infer some kind of mathematical expression. And on the other hand, you have some kind of more like it's a black box model where you have your input, the model gives you an output, but you don't know what's happening in the middle. One of the ways we used in the past to be able to distinguish Parkinson was the use of what it is genetic programming or evolutionary algorithms. In this kind of approaches, what you have is some kind of graphs that are when you find a good representation of the graph, this graph can be translated to a mathematical equation, which make it easy to understand. And in this way, long time ago, we published some papers using the data as a raw data, as you see, as a time series of the velocity of the and the coordinates of the tablet. And using these evolutionary algorithms, we were able to show that there are models that are able to give you a good hint about the diagnosis of if a person has Parkinson's or not. On the other hand, with the time, Parkinson's is not only a condition that develop motor disabilities in a way, also affect the cognition. And in the normal timeline of Parkinson's, you start with normal cognition, and with the time you become with my cognitive impairment, and if the disease develop enough, you finish with dementia. However, the speed and the steps between these how these steps develop are really varied between people. And one of the things is to be able to track and to understand in which level you are. And in this way, we created another classification model that what we try to do is to infer if from a normal drawing, we cannot only see if you have a motor impairment, but also if you have some kind of also cognitive disabilities. And for that, we use a technique that is called multi-objective optimization, that it tries to find the features that are able to discriminate if you have the condition or not, but are able to be a good feature for the part of the condition and also the part of the motor. And the point is like these features, you construct the model and you try to find the models that are good in between that. It's a good compromise, it's a model of good compromise between both objectives. Because of course, the features of both objectives are rather varied, are very different. And for that, the good point is our data set was collected from a clinical point of view, and we have the assessments from the clinicians who give you not only how the person was from the point of view of the motor impairment, but also about the condition. And for that, we have what is called the Unified Parkinson Disease Rating Scale, that we use only the part of the motor, and also the Montreal Cognitive Assessment that give you an idea between where the subject are between normal condition, mild cognitive, and dementia. And for that, what we choose this time is to use some kind of model that as well was very used and understandable by the clinicians, and we use polynomial regression. Polynomial regression is a normal has a normal polynomial structure where in a way you can in a way subtract some kind of feature values and create a model as you see. And what we do is to consult our clinicians, and the clinicians gave us 31 features that they thought they could be useful to in a way distinguish patients with and without Parkinson's from the movement and the cognitive point of view. And what we do is this kind of, again, evolutionary algorithm, that what you do is to create random models And you try to evolve these models, thinking that it's like some kind of evolutionary modification of the models until the model is good, is the best of the ones that you have, and then these ones are the ones that are chosen. The models are only compounded by the physical features that we discovered beforehand, that was given by the clinicians, and then the model also choose which kind of regression model we will use, if it's linear, if it's quadratic, cubic, etc. And we plot this kind of cognitive and motor deficit, and we found this kind of elements, and we saw that there were some elements that we could recognize as a cognitive deficit, but of course the drawings showed more problems with the motor. Another thing that we did was with the finger tapping task. As I said, it's like how the user open and close as fast as possible. And we use the same type of techniques. We use this kind of Cartesian genetic programming and this kind of raw information of the velocity and the coordinates to also distinguish. And this kind of tapping tasks are normal, not only for Parkinson, but also used for example, Huntington disease or other conditions. And we found some kind of biomarkers that we were able to report, like especially good for distinguish between Parkinson's and non-Parkinson's. And once that we, in a way, there were other approaches, but that in a way we finished thinking that we were able to do this from a machine learning point of view with all understanding models. We'd also try with deep learning to see if the performance can be even better that we managed to have before. And from this point of view, we use this kind of visual characteristics of the drawings, and we use convolutional neural networks that are especially done to deal with data in 2D, like grid data. And for that, we create this kind of a small neural network or convolutional neural network in which we give them different type of data. We train only with the XY coordinates with an image in black and white. We also use data with this kind of the coordinates plus the pressure, because sometimes even in the description of the assignment, we said that you have to press all the time the tablet. Sometimes it didn't happen. And also we visualize the pressure as a gray color. As much as the person press the tablet, the color become darker. And for that, we were able to report rather high accuracies, and we were very happy. And finally, another thing that we try to see, because the problem of dealing with the images as such is that you lose this kind of temporal component of the data. In the data you have, in the raw data, you have this kind of time series that in a way you know that the 0.00 was written before 0.100 in the XY coordinates. And in a way, we wanted to see if in this kind of temporal components we could extract other features that in a way was also good for discriminating people with Parkinson's. And for that, we implement a couple of architectures, like is long short-term memory and echo state network. Long short-term memory is perhaps the most used from the point of view of recurrent neural networks, and another one that is easy to implement and lighter, and it doesn't require too much resources. And we did some kind of benchmarking where the results were okay, but they were a little bit worse than the convolutional neural network. And with that, the idea is that in a way you don't use this, because, as I said, these models are black box you don't know what's happening in the middle. And the idea is that you really need to complement these tools with some kind of another tools that are able to give you some insights of what happened inside the model. And for that, the idea is that to create other elements that are able to do that. And this is something that is very, very, in a way, very trendy now, in a way. And another thing that, in a way, could improve our final performance is to use all the models together, some kind of ensemble that, in a way, give you individuals outputs of all the predictions, and these predictions can be joined together as a voting system, giving you a most robust final prediction. And that's all. Thank you very much. I don't know if there is any questions. I'm going to come back to I managed to not do it in 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Marta. So yeah, I'd just like to open up to questions. If there's anyone watching through the live stream, we'll just let it catch up. It'll take a few minutes just to catch up. So anyone can just ask any questions there on the event live stream discussion. Just while we're waiting for that, Marta, so you've been talking about diagnosis here. Can you apply these same techniques to monitoring?
Yes, in fact, we had another project where what we do is like, well, in Parkinson's, the problem is that you have on-off states where you saw more the disease or not. And the point is like the clinicians has to give you some kind of drug according to how many times you have this on-off. And this is normally done by reporting of the report of the patient, but sometimes the patients are not in a way are not able to give you a proper report. And what of the things that we did is to create a monitor, a model that using this kind of genetic also programming, we're able to give you some kind of report that you could give to the clinician. The clinician could in a way regulate the doses of the levodopa.
Okay. And I probably should mention to anyone watching as well, Marta is also participating in the hackathon as well with the team. And do you want to just say something? Just take the opportunity to say something about that while we've got you on the live stream. What is it that you're looking to?
I'm working not really for. Okay, I'm working in the part of gait analysis. That is very interesting. Also, gait analysis is also a symptoms of Parkinson's, but we are really focusing in how to create some kind of alarm system that are more prone to avoid false alarms and be very informative and robust from if you deal with a person with very high cognitive impairment that, for example, can forget to put a sensor or a wearable on them, or they can forget to charge it or things like that.
Cool. And if anyone is kind of interested in that, so we need to update the descriptions on the community hub. But I think you were saying to me earlier that possibly a starting point for this would be in fall detection. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. Because the idea is that you can detect if a person with Parkinson has prone to fall because of this cogwheel and this slowness, and there are already algorithms that is able to distinguish that. Then, in a way, we want to create some alert system that is able to alert the person that be careful because perhaps you can fall, and also have this kind of a component of alert if you cannot really avoid the fall.
Well, Nick's just commented here that he'd like to work with you on the freezing detection even after the mashup.
Okay, good.
So you have a collaborator there. Okay, I'm not sure there's any other questions coming through, but yeah, as I said, Marta's team will be right now. The page is gait analysis on the hub. If you've got anything you can comment on the page, we'll be renaming that to to something that kind of encompasses the fall detection as well. A bit more details there if anyone would like to kind of contribute to that. So Marta's contact details are up there on the slide. I just want to leave that up there if anyone wants to follow up with her after this presentation. We'll be uploading the talks in the video section later on, hopefully tonight, if not tomorrow. So anyone will be able to watch that back. later on. So thank you very much, Marta, and look forward to seeing how progress for your team goes this week.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
It's okay. So, hello everyone. Welcome back. I can immediately see on the stream output that there's a problem. So, just bear with us 2 seconds while I cut back to the stream notice again, and I'll fix the problem. And I'll be back in 2 minutes with Neil Sharma. Welcome back, everyone. It looks like it's working now. So I just want to introduce our last speaker of the day. It's Dr. Neil Sharma from Queen Elizabeth Hospital, Birmingham. We'll be talking about clinician engineers, the future of healthcare. Take it away, Neil.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for the kind introduction and also the invitation to this event. It's a really exciting event, so I've been following closely. Let me just share my screen. Hopefully you can see this. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about our network called the Clinician Engineer Hub. We set this up in 2019, really to bring together clinicians and engineers. So I'm going to explain why we did this in the first instance. So this is historical medicine. So clinicians in the audience probably know it well. This is a portrait taken in the 1800s, and it shows a physician interacting very nicely with a patient. And there's two things that we get taught when we are trained or being trained to be a clinician or a surgeon. That is to take a history, so talk to our patients, and then also perform a physical exam. Once we have taken a history, performed a physical exam, we then try and figure out what's wrong with our patients. So that's formulating a diagnosis, and once we do that, we can then figure out how to manage and treat our patients accordingly. But there are some problems with that approach, so I want to share what the issues are now. Firstly, history taking is a subjective process. We are reliant on two things. Firstly, what the patient tells us, are patients being truly transparent when we ask them questions? And secondly, are doctors speaking in a way that patients understand us? There's a lot of evidence to say that we speak in medical speak, medical jargon. Sometimes they don't understand the questions we're asking them. The physical exam, is that always accurate? So I'm a gastroenterology trainee. If I'm to examine someone's abdomen, I could say, okay, there's some tenderness in the abdomen or the organ may be enlarged, but I don't know what the cause is. If someone had a neurological problem, such as a stroke, we could probably figure that out on physical exam, but we don't know if that's due to a bleed or a clot. Cardiovascular exam, also an issue. We could probably say that someone has heart failure, but we can't objectify it. We need to have an echo. So if you think about all the issues, history taking, the physical exam, there's problems along the way. So can you say with 100% accuracy that you can diagnose your patients and then produce an optimum treatment strategy? And for me, the answer is no. So fast forward now to real life medicine, what I like to call, and I recognize for some years that there are a group of professionals called engineers that are helping clinicians all the time in the healthcare space. So let me give you some examples. The CT scan, I use this all the time. If someone has abdominal pain, it gives me an absolute diagnosis. If someone has kidney injury, I put them on dialysis if fluids are not helping them. The dialysis machine designed, developed by engineers. The endoscope allows me to look inside the GI tract. Again, the endoscope designed, developed by engineers. I'm a clinician just simply adopting the technology. Other examples include the ventilators, particularly timely for COVID-19. Without ventilators, clinicians wouldn't be able to manage any form of patient with COVID-19. Cardiovascular issues, a blocked vessel, we can give them aspirin or blood thinners, but eventually you're going to need a stent. Cardiac stents, designed, developed by engineers. And again, timely for this week, the robotic event. Robotics are assisting surgeons all the time, whether surgeons like to admit it or not. So as you can see, there's a new generation forming. And for me as a clinician, probably one of the younger ones, I would say, I would probably conclude that we have clinician scientists, clinician educators, clinician managers, but we've never had this concept of the clinician engineer. So why is that important in terms of the future of healthcare? Like I've already said, biomedical engineers, chemical engineers, electrical engineers, they are guiding healthcare all the way. They are the silent workforce. But clinicians haven't yet found that link or acknowledged that link. We as clinicians utilize engineering solutions all the time, but we have no training in how these engineering platforms work. So imagine if we work together with engineers to understand what they do, and they could understand what we do, we can recognize limitations in current platforms, and then move on to develop better solutions for our patients. So here it is, the Clinician Engineer Hub, set up in 2019. We offer education, research, and industry opportunities for medical students and early career doctors. These are our workshops. These were all pre the pandemic, so face-to-face, taking place at Queen Elizabeth Hospital, Birmingham. We then moved online through webinars. We have a YouTube channel for those that miss any event. So we started off with 2 subscribers. We're now hitting 99 subscribers, so definitely check us out. Research opportunities. So lots of people have ideas, but they don't know how to link to a particular supervisor or a mentor. So over 2 years, we built collaborations with lots of institutions, universities within the UK and internationally. So you can come to us and say, this is a particular idea that I have around robotics or 3D printing or artificial intelligence, and we can link you with an appropriate supervisor. Industry opportunities. We've formulated industry connections with Besta Consulting, Cambridge Healthcare Research, and more recently, Medtronic. We have an advisory board to make sure that we're doing everything above board. Lots of experts on our board to guide us and mentor us. We wanted to test out how valuable the clinician engineer concept was, so we held a conference last year, and we ran it predominantly through social media. We hit 27 million impressions. We managed to get speakers from Google, Microsoft, and Amazon Web Services. And we also had the head of diagnostics from the WHO, Adriana, who supported our platform. We held a hackathon recently led by a group in Canada looking at engineering solutions for healthcare, and that was very successful, with speakers from IBM. We've been endorsed by the New England Journal, so that was a great achievement there, and also more recently the Lancet. For those of you interested in the academic space and less the industry space, we've launched a journal with Springer Nature because there's no place to actually say, if you have a clinician engineer concept or an idea, where do you actually publish your findings? There are medical journals, there are engineering journals, but nothing that really sort of meets in the middle. We're on social media, so at Clinic Engine if you're interested with what we're doing on a daily basis. We partnered recently also with EIT Health, and our future plans focus around workshops, international events once we can fly again, research, and further industry. So as it's a robotics event, I thought I would touch upon some element of robotics for those of you that are interested in the endoscopy space. So what is endoscopy? Well, gastroenterologists do endoscopy all the time. We also have nurses that do endoscopy in the UK, which is great as well. Now, endoscopy is a procedure where we can look inside the digestive system, either from the top or also the bottom end, take pictures, recognize if there's any lesions there, such as early cancer, and then remove those accordingly. But what are the issues with current endoscopy? Well, we have a lack of triangulation, limited degrees of freedom. Our spatial orientation is also limited, and our approach to taking out tissue is not often optimal. Sometimes it's done in a piecemeal fashion. So robotics are slowly coming into the endoscopy space. It's not there yet, but I'm sure in my lifetime it will definitely happen. And we have an excellent group based in Singapore, the Endo Master platform, which involves both a surgeon and an endoscopist. The surgeon utilizes the master console to control the endoscope, And the endoscope has two arms. It has a suturing arm and a grasper arm. So you're able to resect tissue and then suture afterwards. And this group in Singapore, led by Professor Lawrence Ho, they did a clinical trial, so an actual human trial as opposed to an animal trial, where they were able to resect, utilizing robotic endoscopes, gastric cancer up to 2.2 centimeters. And the mean procedural duration for the process, ESD, endoscopic submucosal dissection, was 39 minutes. So how do we move on to adopt robotic endoscopy? We need clearly larger scale clinical trials. We need to focus on safety and particular cost effectiveness. Robotic endoscopes are definitely going to be expensive. And then we need to train physicians and surgeons in the process. Training now is already particularly heavily regulated. So how would we train the next generation in robotic endoscopy? And various sort of assumptions are it's likely to be virtual reality based, simulation based, similar to how pilots train when they're obtaining their pilot license or maintaining their license. And the other element is capsule endoscopy. So I think this is particularly cool. We all have a particular bias or an interest. You may have come across the capsule endoscope. So this is a camera in the shape of a pill, so you can easily swallow it. And it traverses the entire digestive system. It takes pictures every 8 to 10 seconds, and the whole process takes up to 8 hours. Why do we use a capsule endoscopy? Well, as I mentioned, the camera from the top, the camera from the bottom, it's not able to look at the small bowel in complete detail. So that's why we use the capsule. But what are the problems with the capsule endoscope? Problems are the fact that we cannot control it. So if there was a robotic element, maybe we could. We can't take tissue samples. We can only take pictures. So if we're able to have a pincer-like process to the capsule, that would also be particularly awesome. So I know there's lots of groups around the world looking at robotic capsule. I definitely can say this is the future. If anyone's been following what's happening pandemic-wise, the NHS is actually utilizing capsule endoscopes to catch up on all the people that have not been able to have their colonoscopies because of the pandemic and the focus on COVID-19. I know recently as well, Amazon has worked together with Medtronic where you can actually buy these capsules and you can have the process done at home. And a physician will then, through their video platform, look and see what's the matter with you. So that's where the future is really going. I think a very exciting space for people with a robotic interest. So for further information, if you're interested in the Clinician Engineer concept, you want to be part of our journey, visit our website, clinicianengineer.com. We're on Twitter at Clinic Engine, Facebook and Instagram. And for those of you that like old-fashioned email, that's contact@clinicianengineer.com. For people that are also interested in more hacking from a engineering perspective and healthcare solution perspective, we have a Design for Health bootcamp that's going to be happening virtually between MBRU in Dubai and Imperial College Dyson Engineering in London. That's going to be held between the 8th to the 19th of August. There's no charge. So anyone that's interested to come together as engineers, scientists, clinicians, medical students, you can be part of this great event. It's going to involve engineers and clinicians across both sites. And as you know, Dubai is always innovating in terms of the next technological platform and engineering platform. So it'll be very interesting to see what they're up to. So I'm going to pause there. Happy to take any questions. I'll try and get out of my screen share.
Hi Neil, so yeah, thanks very much for that. I actually should have adjusted the screen there so we were side by side, but can you hear me okay there?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay, so so thanks very much for that. Just to invite questions from the community. If anyone wants to comment on the discussion on the event live stream, I am seeing a couple of questions coming through.
Sure.
So I'm just going to just start with something, a question of myself. Obviously, so Product Forge is all about bringing together people from different disciplines. So obviously clinicians, software engineers, entrepreneurs, and so on. Do you think, so I mean, I don't want to paint a caricature of folk of anyone in the NHS. I know that having spoken to some people, people who have joined the NHS, obviously a very long time ago, maybe haven't been steeped in technology, and that's quite understandable. To what extent do you see the culture changing and an inevitability that I guess all clinicians will become some kind of engineers to a certain extent in the future?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. There's definitely a divide, so there'll always be a generational divide, I think. I'm part of the millennial generation, and we're kind of fairly tech savvy, but I know the generations beneath me are more tech savvy, I think. And I think more of the senior clinicians, they obviously weren't raised in the technology phase. It wasn't really available. And they utilize that classic process of taking a history, performing a physical exam. So if I talk to them about biomedical engineering, obviously they're scratching their heads. I'm definitely not going to say that everyone needs to be a clinician engineer. I think it's a platform that's available for those that are interested. And I think it's something that's been really positively embraced so far. A lot of the universities, the medical space has acknowledged what we're doing. And I think it's great. And I think a lot of the students are very excited by it. It could be a complete disaster 5 years from now, but you have to try these things out. So, yeah. And I think from personal experience, I've noticed patients really have changed. So patients are empowered to lead their own healthcare, and we obviously take direction from them. And a lot of the time when I see patients in the clinic or the ward, they'll be the first to say, oh, do you mind if I have a CT scan, or what about another endoscopy to make sure everything's okay? And sometimes it's not indicated, but patients are the population that we're looking after, and they're keen to have engineering-based diagnostic methods. I think gone are the days where the clinician says, I'm just going to talk to you and examine you, and then this is what's the problem. I think that's quite outdated.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So I'm gonna. I'm playing a sort of one-man band here, hosting and also managing the live stream in the background. So I'm going to ask you this. I'm going to dash away to try and get it so we're side by side and not tiny little squares in the corner. But one of the comments here on the stream from Shreya, she said, "I've long felt there's a bit of a gap between engineering and medical sciences. I'm really hoping I can work in that gap in the future, especially engineering to create solutions for the medical sector. As an early career researcher, this is really exciting." So I guess there's no question there as such, but I mean, what is your advice for people who are starting out in their career, who are kind of junior clinicians and so on?
Get in contact with us. We are pulling students in all the time. If you've got the time, the interest, we're happy to have you on board. Lots of things that we're doing all the time. So events, obviously at the moment it's all virtual, but we are starting our research back. COVID-19 has set us back in some degree, but we're running clinical trials that have an engineering focus, definitely in Birmingham and through our partner institutions. So we can definitely help you. So yeah, if you are interested, visit our website, clinicianengineer.com, and we can guide you along the way. Yeah, our student team are all very friendly, so don't be shy.
It's one of these farcical situations. I was just hoping the stream is going to update there. I don't think it is yet. I'm just going to move on to the next question, so I try and sort this out. A question from Professor Mel. There's also an important role for psychologists within the clinician-engineering relationship. The cognitive aspect of learning to work with technology and in the learning process is extremely valuable, and understanding of technologies like eye tracking can bring a lot more to the table. Again, more of a comment than a question, but is there anything you'd like to comment on that?
Well, that's why I like events like this, because it makes me think as well. So what we want to do all the time in our network is to bring all different aspects to the clinician-engineer interface. And there's things that we don't know about because we're just exploring at the moment. So yeah, definitely. Professor Mel, did you say? Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, get in contact with us and we can work in different angles, different directions. It's really very exciting. and we're always exchanging ideas and having different viewpoints all the time. So it's a very embracing network. Very little politics, so it's more fun than anything, and we're achieving some really great stuff.
I'm so sorry for I'm watching what the effects of my edits on the live stream are having. I think I'm going to give up at this point. We're probably on the last couple of questions anyway. So Nick,
you need to get one of those cat faces like the lawyer on Zoom, and that would be the
just finish it. Yeah, I just need someone else sitting over there that I can say, "Can you fix that?" Nick is saying it's good to see someone somewhere that clinicians can take their ideas for links and advice if they don't have the time to develop these themselves. Do you have a system for helping people along this path in terms of grants, funds, IP, or co-founding?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. So far, our funding has all been through sort of an external sponsorship. So what we've been focusing on at the moment is prize funding. So through our events, we wanted to give prizes and awards for people that came up with really good innovations. So we did that recently with the Clin Hacks event. Funding, again, I think what we're aiming to do is we, through our connections, obviously utilize funding that's already in existence. So say, for example, we originally started with a partnership between Imperial and King's, so there's already funding in place, and different universities come together that way. We haven't as yet focused on, say, putting in funding applications at the moment, because we haven't really seen a need to do it. I'll give you a recent example. So we're running a AI colonoscopy trial, and we partnered with Medtronic, and they're giving us the device for free. So there's always opportunities, I think, not to always push for a grant and see if technology can be donated to us. Because grants at this time, I can imagine, are very difficult to get, particularly with COVID. And funds are probably all focusing on COVID-19. But I'm happy to look into it in more detail, yeah.
Shreyas just commented again, I'm a researcher, but my current project is basically working in that space. Thanks for the website. I'll definitely get in touch. And I'm definitely going to read this out. And thank you for all your efforts, Alan. Thank you very much.
Alan, you've done a good job.
Mel's just said, I would be very happy to connect to discuss this further, as I have a company working in this area. So I think, Neil, you're on the hub, aren't you? So you'll be able to comment, you'll be able to reply there if anyone wants to get in touch with Neil.
Absolutely, yeah. contact@clinicianengineer.com, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram we've started, but I don't know much about Instagram, but I know that the kids like it, so I have to do these things.
I mean, it's already old news now. Everyone's on TikTok, so you're not on TikTok.
I mentioned TikTok in our last meeting, but the consensus was no. So I don't know why my team didn't like TikTok, but that could change.
Well, this is the thing. When you called yourself a millennial earlier, I'm always really annoyed that I am technically a millennial. There is a sub-generation between Generation X and Millennial. I think it's Zennial. Zennial. Yeah. So that's what I like to think of myself as part of the special generation, not really one of these millennials. I mean, I didn't grow up with the internet, So I think that sets us aside a wee bit, doesn't it?
Yeah. No, fair enough.
Yeah. Okay, so just one last shout if anyone wants to ask Neil any questions, but otherwise we'll be, obviously the talks will be available online. Anyone can watch the event live stream back right now anyway. If you want to rewind later on this evening when we've stopped streaming, then you can do that on our YouTube link, and I'll be uploading the talks into the video section. Obviously get in touch with Neil directly through his contact methods, or you can say hello on the hub. Yep. And for anyone who's tuning in for whatever reason late today and you want to get involved in everything that's going on, feel free to email events@productforge.io if you have an idea that you'd like to pursue at the hackathon this week. If you're any of the participating teams, same goes. I'll be getting in touch with everyone just to chase everyone up. I know some people have sent me their descriptions through for their projects, and I'll be putting. I keep saying this, but I hope we get them in a bit slowly. But we'll get them all up into the hub. So anyone who's watching this is a member of the community on the hub who wants to weigh in and provide their feedback for the teams we've got working this week, that would be more than welcome. And otherwise, before my voice fails me, I'm going to log off today. Thanks again, Neil.
Thank you.
Cheers, and good evening, everyone. And we'll see you all back here at 9:30 tomorrow.
Great. All the best. Take care. Bye.
Cheers.